Hi, I'm Vicky Carter and you're listening to the Let's Go Kickass Today podcast. Every single month I interview incredible people from the fields of music, adventure and culture. Guess what? Guess what I'm doing this month? I'm doing exactly that. And it's all about love. No, I'm not going to be sharing my dating experiences, though if you do want to hear about that, you should definitely check out my comedy. Instead, I'm talking about love in different areas of your life. First up, I'm going to be speaking to Anna Neale, a woman of a fantastic variety of skills and trades, about her love for the music industry.
It's just a matter of identifying, if you're a songwriter, then what else could you do? If you're a composer, what else could you do? If you're probably already recording from home, so could you record other people? Could you do live sound? Could you podcast?
Plant and gardening journalist, author and podcaster Jane Perrone about her love of plants and gardening.
The geeky kid whose Bible was a houseplant book, and I was old before my time as a teenager and knew the Latin names of lots of houseplants.
And co-founder of the Feminist Shop, author, speaker and gender equality champion Virginia Mendez about her love for equality and all things feminism.
I'm not where I want to be in the future, but I'm loving the journey. And I think that part is so important because it cannot be just about where you want to be. It has to be about loving all the way to get you there, because the journey is going to be definitely longer than you expect and look completely different than you anticipated.
First up, I speak to the incredibly talented and multi-skilled Anna Neale. She's been working in the music industry for 20 years, and she tells me how important it is to diversify your skills, the exploration of Roman history and culture through her songwriting, and the encouragement of more women in the industry and how that should be a priority, as well as how music and the arts have been impacted by COVID. I'm delighted for you to join me now. Anna Neale, singer, songwriter, composer, session vocalist, voiceover artist, lecturer, engineer and producer. Did I get all of them? Oh, and
You did.
yeah,
That's amazing. Well done. Yeah, I'm very impressed.
Thank you so much. Well, you're also a mentor and ambassador, so I've just remembered I had to include those as well. So obviously your skills, are so versatile. Why is it important to be able to create the music beyond the music and educate others as well?
I don't think anyone in any creative career can just survive on one thing alone. I don't know anyone who just survives on one thing now. It's very much a case of you have to have a portfolio career and you need to have as many strings to your bow as possible, if you like. So, I'm lucky in what I do, but I work very hard at what I do as well. And I've worked very hard to diversify, from being that singer-songwriter to writing songs for other people, to composing radio jingles, to, teaching those skills to other people. I think I've reached that point in my life where I've been in the music industry now for 20 years. So I kind of feel that I'm in a good place to give back, which is the good side of educating, obviously, teaching at university. And the other bits I enjoy, I enjoy a challenge. And I find that all these different roles start to stack up and present new challenges. So there's no chance of ever being bored, basically.
Definitely. I'm all about that. I'm all about having multiple things in different areas. And yeah, it diversifies your every single day. Now, you highlighted that you've been in the industry for 20 years. What made you want to involve yourself in the first place?
I didn't come to music till quite late. I was about 13 or 14, and I was quite shy at school initially, and it wasn't until I started singing and then I decided I wanted to play the guitar. So this is in the 90s, it's Britpop, guitars are cool, girls with guitars are even cooler. So I decided to play, to basically learn, and that I was going to be good at this. Not that I'm ambitious or an overachiever or anything like that, but and I guess I just found my calling there, and it was something that I wouldn't be able to survive in life without doing. And I've always been quite goal driven, so I've always worked to the next thing, and if I didn't know something I would make sure I would learn it. So like production, recording at home, I try and work with as many people as well, network, all of that type of stuff. So I think it's just something that's ingrained in you, that you have to express yourself, but that expression will manifest itself in lots of different ways.
And through expression, through specifically song, your song Riverman in 2012, it combined Roman history and culture, and you even, performed, I think that was amazing, at the British Museum. Why was it important for you to explore, history through music?
I got really bored of doing commercial pop writing. So I'd been in Canada for a while, and I'd been working with some companies over there that provide the music for Canadian pop idol and stuff, and it's great, you know. But you get to a point, you go, okay, right, well, I'm married and I'm settled now, and I can't write the boy meets girl, so I'll do boy meets girl and gets covered in a volcano, you know. And Pompeii was something that had fascinated me since I was a child, and I got to go there in 2010, and that was kind of the trigger point for me. And I thought, right, you know, there are stories of people who lived here that have never really been told, especially the stories of the women. You know, there are all sorts of different women that were there, that were prominent, that were kind of ahead of their time. And I really wanted to express that in a way that was musical, but also to explore what music may have sounded like in Roman times as well. So that took me down a whole journey of looking at the music of ancient Greece, and you know, the works of Sappho, who was technically a singer-songwriter, if you like, the first ever singer-songwriter, and her works, and that all just combined into one project, if you like. And I managed to find a way to be able to express the stories of these characters in a way that was sympathetic to the style of that era. And then I found that the closest thing to a Roman lyra, which is like a harp, is a kora, which is an African instrument. And so I approached Jali Fili Kishoko and asked him if he'd be willing to come on the album. So that kind of gave it that flavour. So I really enjoyed that album, but one of the best bits was performing in the British Museum dressed as a Roman goddess in the Parthenon Gallery with a rock band. That was very cool.
That is amazing. That's a huge moment. And I think you also worked with Mary Beard as well, the Cambridge lecturer as well. She was there at one point, am I right?
She helped me get the British Museum gig. So I reached out to her and said, you know, look, your book is the main stimulus for this project. And we sort of struck up a conversation over email, and I ended up doing a show in Cambridge, at the University of Cambridge, in the Museum of Classical Archaeology. And she came and did the talk in between my sets. So it was like, Mary Beard was my interim act. It was amazing. And she was great. She was really helpful. She enjoyed the album. She helped a lot with the British Museum stuff, was very open to the project, I think, from its research perspectives. She's quite a big fan of pop music as well. So that was brilliant. And of course, being independent means that I had the freedom to be able to do that. I didn't have to seek permission from a label or a publisher or justify it, because if I'd had, it probably would never have happened.
It allows you this creativity, and that's what I love about your music. It's that you can dip into these worlds and cultures and history, and you're educating people through song and connecting people as well. I mean, before, as the following song, I think, which really struck a chord with me when we first connected quite a while back, was Evolution. And you connected with Syrian artists, and I think members of the English National Opera as well. Why is it important for you to mix that culture and history? And I think on your album Wide Sky, yeah
I mean, it was kind of, again, meeting people and things aligning, if you like. I mean, I started working with Surrey Arts, who work with you know, families that have been homed in Surrey, that have come from Syria or Iraq or Iran. And I was listening to their stories and thinking, right, well, there needs to be a way of telling these stories. You know, these are people, you know, we are all human in the end. And that's what that album was we are all human. And working with them was amazing. You know, all this musical heritage that I'd never heard of. You know, I'd never heard of a darbuka. I'd never heard somebody sing in Arabic with microtones before. And it was just like, wow. So actually, I was really honoured to be able to have the opportunity to work with them, because they had this amazing musical understanding that just came to them. There was no thinking about it. There was no barriers to it. Everybody did some form of music. It was just part of the culture. And I thought, God, nobody hears this. Nobody hears this in the UK. Why are we not hearing this? So, I mean, it's not an authentic marriage of Arabic music with pop music. It's a kind of tolerated Western version of it. But that was really inspiring for me as a writer and a storyteller. And then to work with the English National Opera gave me an opportunity to sort of experiment more with some classical writing, which I hadn't done before. And it was good to be able to kind of show off some different skills, to actually have the ability to, one, work with these amazing singers, and then to try and put that in a way that was accessible to a sort of popular music audience as well.
I think it diversifies your skill set and your interests as well. I mean, the number of instruments that you're surrounded at the moment. You said a number of guitars and drums, and being the ability of being able to dip in and, you know, connect with people from all over the world, you know, different musicians, and explore what they do, I think is an incredible impressive trait as a musician and an artist. Do you think there's an element of timing and right place as well when it comes to creating music and meeting people?
Yeah, I think there is always that. I'm always been one to grab an opportunity with both hands. I never let anything go. A bit like a bloodhound. If I latch onto something, that's it. I latch onto it. So I do think it was of the time, you know, particularly in 2018. You know, the whole story of people, you know, having to leave their homes. The Syrian war was a big news thing. It was a big political thing. You know, so those stories resonated more, I think, because of that time. Yeah, I think people had more patience and tolerance to listen to stories as well. I find it quite frightening, actually. I find the whole TikTok thing absolutely terrifying. So yeah, I wonder if there will be sort of great albums and great story songs now, which is why I'm doing a PhD in it. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Another thing to add to your million skills. Oh, fabulous. So you touched on a few of the places that you've performed. You've also performed Edinburgh Fringe Festival, I think in Toronto as well. There was a Canada Music Week. Yeah, what would you say has been your favourite place to perform?
I loved being in Canada. I love the people in Canada. I did a lot of work over there. Toronto was such a cool place. It just had a cool vibe. You know, I'd been to Boston, and it was just something that sort of clicked with Toronto with me. You know, I had children, so I couldn't really go back that much after I had children. But I mean, that was one of my favourite places. And I performed in Singapore. I had a residency there for 3 months, and I loved that as well. You know, the ability to be somewhere almost completely different. It's still got its kind of colonial associations, but you know, honestly, I swear I was the healthiest I've ever been when I lived in Singapore. The diet, the fact it was warm all the time, you know, the fact that you could go to the beach, that was nice. But I think it's really important to travel and experience different things. And I've been very lucky. You know, I've been down to Texas, I've been up to Massachusetts, I've been to Canada, I've been across Europe, I've been, you know, partly across Asia. I'd love to do more. We'll just have to
See what happens in the future. That's so exciting, especially with all your projects as well. I think that's wonderful, the experiences you've, you know, already had so far, and the skill set. It just highlights to anyone who's listening and is out there, you know, if there is an area that you're struggling to build yourself up or get in through that door, there are other doors, there are other ways to develop your skills and passion for the industry like you have. Definitely.
Yeah, it's just a matter of identifying, you know, if you're a songwriter, then what else could you do? If you're a composer, what else could you do? If you're probably already recording from home, so could you record other people? Could you do live sound? Could you podcast? You know, that it's just, it can get quite hard to think outside the box. I'm not going to lie, it is exhausting trying to think of the next new thing. But then equally, when you establish what that is, it can be really exciting.
And you're also on a number of committees. I think you're part of the F list as well, ambassador, mentor. Why is it important for women to be on these committees, on these boards, and having conversations?
We need to encourage more women into the industry, and we need to make sure that it's a safe industry for those women to come into. You know, there's a lot of blasé-ness about, oh, you know, there's always opportunity. There isn't as much opportunity for women, certainly female producers. You know, the facts speak for themselves. Was it 2% of women 2% of producers are women? You know, and I think it's important, considering I've been lucky from the people that I've worked with, and I've managed to do some amazing things. It's important to be able to enable the next generation to be able to do that. And I certainly don't want the next generation of women having to put up with some of the stuff that I've had to put up with over the last 20 years, and every other woman I know that's had to put up with. You know, enough is enough. So if we can educate the next generation to say no, and no, stand your ground, then, you know, maybe we can make it more inclusive and change things for the better.
I mean, I've only been in radio and audio for 5 years, and I've already faced so many challenges and stereotyping and obstacles. So I can't fathom what it's been like for the last 20 years, seeing that change and going through and knocking on certain doors. I mean, what do you think needs to be changed, as well as, of course, encouraging women to say no? I mean, how do we get more women producing and also on lineups? Is it tackling both the top dogs and also starting from the bottom as well?
We've got a problem in that most of the top people in the music industry is changing now, are men. A lot of it is also down to confidence as well. So a lot of women do not feel as confident producing, and that could be because of their previous experience. Maybe they've worked in a scenario where they've been made to feel, or they've been undermined. I think if you can make a change at the top, that would help. If you know, the execs of these labels were women, that would help. Possibly women that have had the experience of working in the industry as creatives as opposed to just business people. And the confidence thing is a big thing, but also having that safe space. You know, once you've had a first experience of discrimination or you know, anything to do with Me Too, it can be quite traumatic. And you know, I think there needs to be more support within what you'd kind of label the sisterhood, if you like. You know, if there is a genuine sisterhood, then this needs to be women supporting other women, so that we have this network to say, you know, that's okay, that's not okay, here's an opportunity, here's another opportunity, and then we can start, you know, really sort of shifting the tide.
You're right. It is all about supporting other women and empowering other women, being able to speak up for themselves. And confidence is a massive thing in our own ability, in our talent, in our growth, in our development. Being able to see another woman at that board, being inspired by them. You know, obviously a huge example is Kamala, which is a ripple effect all across sort of America. So there is making change across the world and in different levels. Speaking, I know you've mentioned podcasts. Speaking that, you've got a podcast in the making, haven't you, right now? Is that right?
I have. It's currently filtering through networks to land slowly. Yeah, no, I decided that, you know, I would use this experience to create another podcast, because the world needs more of them, doesn't it? You know. But this is a telling it like it is. You know, I feel that I'm in a position now where I just don't care. If you want to come after me, come after me. So this podcast is basically telling it like it is. So we've got a friend of mine, Dave Roundtree, who's from Blur, and he's talking about his experiences. He's very vocal. He's an activist within the industry about, you know, how unfair the system is and that it needs to change. So he talks about technology and how that's changed things. We've got LX, who's an independent artist, talks about how hard it is to be an artist financially. Kojo Samuel talks about, you know, the challenges of creating music. But, you know, we always end it on a positive note. You know, this is not a downward looking on things. It's a way of, you know, how do we actually navigate this industry now in 2021 in the midst of a global pandemic, through Brexit, all of this, what happens now? So I'm hoping that it's funny. There are some funny bits, and then we have a laugh. You know, we tell a few bad jokes. But I've done it with a friend of mine, Dan Chisholm, who's a former BBC broadcaster. So we're trying to make it sound swish. But it's been really good fun. It's been really enlightening. And then when you talk to other people, you realise that you're not alone in the challenges that you faced. You know, and there are some pretty high up people that are also struggling.
It sounds great. It sounds like no filters, you know, straight to the point is what people need right now. They need some reality. They need some honest advice, especially from people who are established in the industry and have some real insight. I mean, what are your thoughts on how the music industry is currently in this situation? And I know there's been a number of, oh my gosh, you're breathing heavily. You're like, oh God, here we go. Open the can of worms.
Where do I start?
I know that there's been a number of, you know, dressed in red, not just in the UK, all across Europe as well. I saw a really haunting video of sound engineers in Italy, all with their boxes,
Yeah.
you know, and that was a really powerful image. And obviously I've got friends in the industry as well. I mean, how long do you think it will take to recover from the pandemic, and will there be artists and engineers who don't recover?
There will be. There will be a huge number of artists, engineers, writers, radio broadcasters, everything who won't. It's a very tenuous situation at the moment. It's compounded by the Brexit, the Brexit stuff as well. You know, no one can make money from streaming apart from being a record label. Then you can make money. If you write a song or you're an artist, you're not going to get much. You can't live off that. Live was masking that. You know, 80% of an artist's income came from live. That's not really sustainable, is it? I mean, it's not sustainable for people's mental health, the mental health of those artists. There was always going to be a tipping point. So in some respects, this pandemic has meant that there's an awareness on the way that people engage with and consume music. So that's important. There's a government inquiry going through at the moment for the DCMS that's looking into that. Go and watch it. Some of it's quite funny. And as for the live sector, you know, there's funding that will keep them going until March. You know, the way things are going right now, I don't think there'll be any indoor gigs, possibly not even for this year, if I'm completely honest. It's just so unpredictable. And the thing is, the music industry does not cope with things being unpredictable. They can't change quick enough. So I guess, you know, I'm quite lucky in that, you know, because I'm educating, I've got income coming in, but I do wonder what it's going to look like later on. I have no definitive answer. I wish I did have, and I'm hoping that people, you know, keep the faith, but there are a lot of factors working not in the arts favor, and it's not just music. It's theatre, it's actors. I think the only thing that's doing well at the moment is TV, because that's what everyone's watching. If you're starting out now, you know, you've got to really love writing music and performing it to people. You've really got to have the passion now, because if you don't have the passion and the belief and the love, you won't last long. You know, you've got to really focus as well. So, you know, think about what you want to do. Be prepared for the fact that you are going to have to do things other than being a singer-songwriter, because even those people who are signed to record labels, or even, you know, we're talking about the 0.4% of those that are successful. So they're the Taylor Swift, Ed Sheerans. The majority of people that I know that are signed to majors have also got other jobs, as well as producers, and they're not necessarily jobs in music. So remember, it's a job and it's work, but also remember that you will have to do other things, and that to have a support network around you is absolutely vital to do this journey. Speak to people, go and meet people, network, but don't give up.
Some excellent advice there from Anna. Make sure to check out her podcast, What's the Point, for more real conversations about the music industry. My next guest is plant and gardening journalist, author and podcaster of On the Ledge, Jane Perrone. She tells me when she fell in love with gardening and plants, the rise and popularity of houseplants in the pandemic, and I even ask her to rate my houseplants. First up, she tells me why she started out as a journalist.
I wanted to be a journalist from a very young age, from, I don't know how old I was, maybe about 7 or 8, when I had my very first review in the school magazine, which is a one-line type thing about a school trip. And from that moment on, seeing my name in print, I wanted to be a journalist. And so I went down quite a traditional journalism route, did a degree in English, and then I did a master's degree, and then I did my postgraduate journalism qualification and worked in local papers. And throughout that time was doing gardening as my kind of hobby and side interest, which I've been into since I was a little kid. And then when I had my first child, I went on, but by this time I was working at The Guardian on what was then the website of things, in those days when print journalism and web journalism hadn't fully collided. They were two separate things at the time. So I was working on the website of things. So that was 2000 to 2007. Quite a busy news period, if you remember back then. Quite a lot of things happened during those 7 years. Anyway, I had my first child and I was very burnt out from breaking news, basically. And the job of gardening editor at Weekend Magazine, the Guardian's Saturday magazine, came up while I was on maternity leave. And I just thought, that's my perfect job right now. I want to work part-time. I want to do something that isn't breaking news and high stress and having to stay late or go into the office because Saddam Hussein's been captured. And you don't get much of that in gardening. There's not a lot of breaking news in the gardening realm. So I got that job and I did that for 9 years. And then for the last, I guess it's 3 or 4 years, I've been freelance writing for lots of different people. So yes, it's a fun life.
Definitely. And why do you think you fell in love with gardening in the first place? Is it the nurturing of a living being and seeing the fruits of your labours? What is it about it?
That's a really good question. I think it was in my DNA from a very early age because I was, sowing parsley seeds under the kitchen windowsill. I must have only been about 5 or 6 because I remember saying to myself, I'll come back in a few minutes and see if they've sprouted. Obviously not really understanding how seeds worked at the time. And I had ended up with quite a few cacti and succulents and things. And that, I guess maybe my dad was a keen amateur gardener, a hobby gardener, as was my mum's dad, my granddad. So I suppose it was following his example, plus also just in my genes, because I just wanted to be doing stuff with plants from quite a young age. And so, yeah, I was that kid, the geeky kid whose Bible was a houseplant book, and I was just, I was old before my time as a teenager and knew the Latin names of lots of houseplants. So yes, I wasn't your average child, I suspect. But what's really nice now is that in my mid 40s, suddenly everyone's catching on to this thing that I've been enjoying since I was young. So that's really great. And the boost in houseplants has been brilliant to see.
I was going to say, you're the original trendsetter before, the trend even lifted off, because there has been such a boom in houseplants, especially during this time in the pandemic as well. I mean, what do you make of it? Do you think of all these people, you're hoping they're looking after their plants right? Or do you think it will be a phase?
Well, I think there's always a cyclical element to these things. I'm sure that not everybody who's gone out and splurged on a lot of houseplants during the pandemic will stick with it. That said, I think there is a general shift. I think they call it the green shift, where people are understanding that surrounding yourself with greenery inside and out is a really good thing for your mental health. This concept of biophilia, our need and desire and the benefits of surrounding ourselves with nature. And I think a lot of people have hooked onto that during the pandemic and will maintain that because they found that it's been so good for their mental health. I mean, one of the things though, on the flip side of that, one of the things that always sort of I try to emphasize, especially to new people who've enthusiastically gone out and bought a load of plants without necessarily doing their research, is that it's okay if you kill a few house plants along the way. It's really fine. We all do it. I still do it from time to time, and it's how we learn. So I try not to make people get very hung up on the fact that their first peace lily died and ended up on the compost heap, because that's perfectly normal.
That's good, because in the state of transparency and honesty, I am one of those people. So originally, probably about 2 years ago, I had one house plant, didn't really look after it, and somehow it managed to survive this entire time. So I thought, okay, I'm going to give this plant some friends. So in the pandemic, I bought a couple of house plants, and I've actually brought them in the room with me, and I wanted you to rate them.
Yeah,
basically, I haven't to do that at all for this. I've just kind of thrown you in the dark
awesome
end, or the green end, Okay, so what do you think of this one? Obviously not good for audio.
This is one of the houseplants that is probably one of the world's most popular houseplants. Devil's ivy, or golden pothos, or epipremnum pinnatum aureum.
That's very impressive.
Names. Yeah. And I mean, it looked great. That looked great. It looked very healthy and full, and it didn't look like it had any major problems. They're a really easy plant, but at the same time, you know, I have killed those in the past. So,
Really? Okay.
you know, I think the trouble with those is that sometimes when you become more experienced with plants, you have some plants that you're like, oh yeah, they're tough as old boots. And you tend to spend all your time with your tricky plants and then you forget your easy plants. But yeah, it's a really, really popular house plant.
We've actually got 2 in this house, yeah. So
Okay.
one for my room and then another one in the room. Okay,
Yeah.
this one, I'm not sure what this name is. It's
Okay.
purple looking.
Yeah, that is Tradescantia spathaceae.
Oh my gosh, you need to go on Mastermind. Wow,
Which is a variegated form of I think it's sometimes called Moses in the cradle is one of the common names because it has little flowers that look like a baby in a cradle. And that's a really nice plant, a really easy plant. It looked okay. Were you worried about that one or was it looks all right?
Okay.
I mean, they can
good.
sometimes suddenly collapse those plants and you never quite know why, but they don't last very long. You have to take some cuttings that you might find it suddenly dies, but take some cuttings and stick them in a glass of water and you should be able to grow some more. But it's a lovely plant and really, really great.
Thank you. It's managed to grow this little bit at the side, which I've only just noticed, really. So I guess
it'll start shooting all over the place, and it's obviously happy, so that's great.
That's great news.
I would give you 10 out of 10 there. That's no criticism here. No shade being thrown. It's all good.
What about this one? This died a bit, so I had to help it. Yeah, and I'm hoping it will bring me the luck that it's coined.
Yes,
That's
yes. Well, nice
itself.
pot as well.
Thank
yes,
you.
Pilea peperomioides, the Chinese money plant.
Wow.
I mean, I've done a whole episode of my show about that because it's got a really fascinating history. But it's a really popular houseplant, and why not? Because it's just so easy to look after, and yeah, it's a great plant. The only problem sometimes people find is that they get really tall and then sort of topple over. But there's ways you can deal with that, and they do respond quite well to just being hacked back. So yeah, that's a great plant.
Oh, interesting. What would you do in that situation if it did begin to topple over? Is that something that you would like string up? As I've
You've
highlighted,
got choices.
I'm not the expert at all. Yeah.
You've got choices actually. You can let it flop. And that's probably what would happen in nature, is that it would just flop over. And it, you know, as you probably know, it's also called the friendship plant because it produces lots of baby plants from the base as it gets more mature. And if you allow it to flop as it does in nature, it comes from Yunnan province in China, and it's one of those plants that will just flop over and then start rooting into the ground and little babies will grow. So that's how it kind of propagates itself. If you don't want it to flop, then you can stake it, so you can just put a stick in there and tie some twine around the stem, or you can be brutal like I am and you can literally just hack the top off, put it in a glass. It sounds like everything, my answer to everything is putting it in a glass of water, but you can put it in a glass of water and then root that top. The bottom will reshoot and the top will make a new plant. So there's a few different options.
That's amazing, the rebirthing of these plants. And so this is, I can imagine your house now, there's loads of glasses with random bits of plants.
Yeah, I mean, you can probably see some
of
no
them.
glasses behind me, but there are lots of things that are being propagated at any one time, yes.
So that is the official word of it, because I've heard that thrown around, but I've never really understood it. So it's called propagation.
So propagation is basically the production of new plants via any means. It could be from sowing seeds, it could be from taking leaf cuttings, it could be from more advanced techniques like air layering and grafting. There's all different kind of ways of making more plants basically, and that's just what propagation is. Yeah.
Oh wow, okay, thank you. And then I've got another one as well. I didn't want to bring it in because it was massive. It's a Swiss cheese plant, which is it's huge. It's I know you've done an episode of this on your podcast as well. I was having a listen, and I mean the leaves just get everywhere. And is it actually Swiss? Where does it originate from?
It's certainly not from Switzerland. No, it comes from Mexico, actually.
Wow.
It comes from Mexico and that part of Central America, but interestingly, it has become naturalized in other parts of the world. So if you go to Australia and certain places in Southeast Asia, it'll be seemingly growing in the wild, but it does originally come from Mexico. And again, another plant that you can hack away at. So if it's getting too big, you can just hack some off. I'm going to say the same thing again. Put it in a glass of water. You can hack some off and you make a new plant and it will resprout, and you can keep it quite compact that way. The other thing with Swiss cheese plants is they produce these very meaty, slightly scary looking aerial roots. Now, an aerial root is just a root that comes out of the stem, and it'll look like a sort of a thin sausage coming out the side of the stem, and it's very disturbing when you first see it and you think, what the hell is that burying into my carpet? Now, with those, you can either just chop them off, or you can push them into the compost below, and they will just grow in there. But that's a plant that survives by growing its way through the canopy of trees in its native home. And so those aerial roots are obviously designed to go out and anchor it to various things that it will climb up as it grows. So they do serve a purpose in the wild, but obviously, in the average living room, not so necessary.
Yes, I've actually got them surrounded by my desk, so every Zoom chat I'm on normally, you can see this huge plant, and as you highlighted, it does wonders for my health, my mental health. I feel I've got a good working space because I've got this green environment around me. You mentioned that some plants are more difficult than others. What would you say are the ones that are more difficult and challenging to care for?
That's a really good question. I mean, some people struggle with certain plants that other people find really easy. It depends on your house is the simple answer. So if you have a flat which is north facing and all the rooms are quite dark, you are going to struggle to grow cacti and succulents. If you've got a lovely sunny south facing big window, succulents are probably going to be your friend. Lots of people struggle with ferns because they need a very constant level of moisture. In my house, I find ferns really difficult to grow, but other people find them really easy. So easiness is a bit of a relative quality because it's very dependent on your conditions and also how you grow. And what I mean by that is, if you're the kind of person who thinks you're being kind to a plant by sort of hovering over it with the watering can every 5 minutes, then generally you will find that houseplants won't like you, because most houseplants don't want to be watered continually. But it depends how you decide to treat your plants, and the more you can know, the more you'll get right. And that's just a question of learning about the plants and where they come from, and therefore what care they need. But yeah, there are some things that are really difficult. Having said that, like lots of people at the minute are trying to go other members of the same family as the Swiss cheese plant, the aroid family, and there are quite a few aroids that are beautiful but really quite difficult in that they need high humidity. Now, most of our homes don't have high humidity. Lots of us are trying to grow things that are quite tricky and investing in things like humidifiers and other ways of boosting the humidity in our homes as a result.
Yes, exactly. There's so many tricks of the trade to try flourish and thrive gardens in our homes. What would you say is your favourite thing to grow? I know it said on your website you like growing weird veg. I was wondering what kind of weird veg are you growing?
Yes, weird veg. So my approach to vegetables is that I want to spend most of my time growing houseplants, so I don't want to devote an awful lot of time to growing veg. So the veg that I grow tends to be perennial veg. What does perennial mean? Well, that just means something that grows over several seasons and doesn't die off at the end of the summer. So in other words, an annual plant has one growing season. A perennial plant will grow for many seasons before it dies. And most of us don't really know much about perennial vegetables because we don't really know how vegetables grow. But there are a few perennial vegetables that are commonly grown, things like asparagus. So that's just in the ground and it shoots up every spring and you cut it back. And things like Jerusalem artichokes and rhubarb. But there are also lots of vegetables which are normally annual, but you can get perennial versions of them. So those are the kind of things I like to grow, and just weird members of the onion family. I've got Egyptian walking onions,
What?
I've got Welsh onions.
What?
Other types of onions, 3-cornered leeks, perennial 9-star broccoli. I've got lots of weird vegetables, and they're great fun and they're not a lot of work. So I don't, people, assume that if you start growing vegetables, you're going to aim for self-sufficiency. And really, that's not a realistic goal for any of us. But what I aim for is that I'm going to have something in my garden that I can go and grab a handful of most months of the year, and it'll kind of liven up my vegetable bowl or my salad bowl, or I can sprinkle it on the top of a stew or whatever.
Oh wow, what a collection. The incredible names of the variety of things you're growing is amazing. Now I want to talk a little bit more about your podcast. I think it's fantastic because it feels like you've created a real community, you know, people, patrons and their supporters, and you get voices of listeners on air as well. What inspired you to create a podcast? Was it a way for you to reach more lovers of plants and gardening around the world?
Exactly. I was a really keen podcast listener myself. Like a lot of people, I was really switched on by listening to the American podcast Serial, which has got nothing to do with gardening. It's a true crime podcast, but it's like so many of us, I listened to that. I was listening to podcasts before then, but that really switched me on to the potential of the medium. And I did a gardening podcast for The Guardian called Sow Grow Repeat with my colleague Alice Fowler. And we had great fun making it. It was just brilliant. It was so much fun. And we did 2 series of that. And then they decided they didn't want to do any more. And I was just really bereft that I couldn't make any more podcasts. And I knew that I could do the presenting side of things, but I wasn't too sure on the technical side of things. But then I just thought, what the hell? I'm just going to do it, because if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And then I'm going to be annoyed that someone's beaten me to it. So I just went ahead and kind of, as you do, kind of learnt to use editing software by Googling, what does this button do? And figured it out and started the podcast. And it's been brilliant as a way of building a community around a particular topic. And I have listeners all over the world.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I heard recently you've got listeners. It was growing in Chile as well, the listenership, and I think that's fantastic. Yep. The sense of community and different plant lovers all across the world growing different things, unusual things, I guess, in each person's place. And so you've also written a book, and you're crowdfunding a book now as well. Tell me about that. I love how you're crowdfunding it, and you're taking not taking no for an answer. I think that's so inspirational.
Well, yes, I mean, it's a slow grind of a process, but the reason why I did it that way is because I had a really clear vision of the book that I wanted to write, and I knew came up with the title Legends of the Leaf. Subtitle is the stories. What is the subtitle? The stories behind 25 iconic houseplants and the secrets to making them grow. So I had a really specific idea about what I wanted to do, and I didn't want that vision to be diluted or changed by a publisher. And obviously, I totally understand that publishers have their own ideas about what they want to do. And when you're working with a publisher, the idea might not end up as you started off. But I was really clear with this book that I just knew exactly what I wanted to do. And so I teamed up with this publisher, Unbound, who work through a crowdfunding model, but they're proper publishers. So it's great because they handle the editing, printing, distribution side of things, and I write the book and we crowdfund it. And once I've reached my target, then it will definitely happen. I'm at 60% now, so hopefully we'll get there fairly soon. And I'm just really passionate that I really want to write this book, because there's a lot of houseplant books out there, but in this internet age of us sort of Googling things, there's so much information that isn't easily accessible about plants that I want to kind of bring to light. So, and that also helps to inform how you look after the plant. So if you know that detail about the aerial roots of the Swiss cheese plant, then that informs how you look after it. If you know how it grows in the wild, it helps you to think, well, okay, how am I going to look after it in my house? And so that's really the aim of the book. And I've been really delighted with the response so far. So hopefully we'll get there before long, and the book will be coming out at some point in the not too distant future.
Well, I'll definitely chip into that. I've learned so much from our chat already. I mean, I think my housemates are going to be delighted that they might have smaller cheese Swiss plants all around the house. So that's for Swiss cheese house plants all around the house. Finally, last question for someone who isn't a fan of incredible gardens and should be inspired by one. Where would you say in the UK is a great spot for someone to be enthralled by the colour or the diversity of a large variety, or even a certain small specific variety of plants?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I'm gonna say, I mean, there's so many places you can go. As a child, one of the places I went that totally inspired me to get into plants was going to the Palm House at Kew Gardens. But I'm not going to go with that because it's too obvious. Instead, I'm going to say West Dean, which is a garden near Chichester in Sussex, and it has incredible greenhouses to start with, and you can go inside the tropical greenhouse and just be transported into a wonderful world of tropical plants. It's got an exquisite orchard where all these beautifully trained fruit trees grow in incredible shapes, and it's got a beautiful carpet of spring bulbs growing underneath it, of fritillaries and other beautiful bulbs, and it's got other lovely areas as well in the garden. It's just a really, really fascinating garden. I went there when I was teaching a course a few years ago, and it's a really fascinating place. The inside the building, there's a lot of this sounds really bizarre, but it's just stuck in my. There's loads of stuffed animals, really bizarre stuffed animals, and amazing. There's a couch shaped like a pair of lips, and there's all these interesting things in the house, and then this incredible garden outside. So West Dean is a wonderful place to visit, and the standard of horticulture is off the scale. It's beautiful, and you just can't fail to be inspired for your own garden. So that would be my tip.
Doesn't Jane have an insane amount of knowledge on houseplants? Just like Anna, they're both incredible women with such a passion for their industry and love and enthusiasm. It's wonderful to hear about. Make sure you check out On the Ledge, her podcast, for more information about houseplants, because I am absolutely useless. Next up is Virginia Mendez. She's co-founder of the Feminist Shop, author, speaker, and gender equality champion. She tells me the passion behind the ethical products and online community they've created, hoping to encourage feminism and challenge people's thoughts. When she realised actually she was a feminist, the stereotypes associated with the word, as well as the truth behind setting up your own business.
Well, I set up actually with my husband. We were looking for presents. It was Christmas 2018, and by then I was a feminist in my heart, and everybody was probably expecting feminist presents for me, so I was not going to disappoint them. And I found out that there were a lot of cool things like Etsy shops and small shops here and there, but there was not a brand or a place that I could automatically go knowing that it was going to be ethical and that had books and had more things. So I felt like there was missing a brand. As much as there were shops or tiny shops, there was not a brand that expressed what I was trying to say with my gifts. My husband works in e-commerce, so we decided to give it a go. And it started with something maybe small, but then we both got very passionate about it, as in, oh, we should have this content, and we should become the biggest library for feminist books worldwide, and we should do this and this. So just when you're so passionate about something, it gets very easy to have a big and ambition vision. So yeah, it's obviously slower than the vision, but we'll get there. And we're already collaborating with great feminist artists and great associations. We're doing profit share, interviewing cool people. So it's all coming together, and it's been an amazing journey so far.
It's so nice that both of you come up with the idea and both of you are working together. That's real element of teamwork there. Yeah, I find that it's more than just products. It's an online community. You know, you've got quizzes. I mean, that's how I originally stumbled on your website. It was, what type of feminist are you? And there's also curated content, like what books, what podcasts, social media accounts you should be following. Why is it important to the both of you to create an online community?
Well, because every decision we made tries to fix, not to fix, just to help. Is this going to make people feel closer to feminists? Is that going to fuel what they feel about it? So it's just never was about product, and we believe a lot in the power of products as to start conversations and make statements. And of course, we believe a lot in the power of books to educate yourself. But it's much more than that. I think my own journey, I wasn't a feminist even when I first met Chris. I was very against the world and all it meant. So I wanted to just put in a website everything that had helped me and all the things that I feel like it would have made me feel closer. And in all these stages, I've lived from not being a feminist to maybe start tiptoeing around the term, or getting some things but other not, and all that. I think there's always something more you can be reading or listening, or there's something else you want to be wearing, just expressing those feelings or that message that you want to have be sharing with other people. So we're trying to get all that and bodily lot up under the brand. So yeah, I think it wouldn't be us just to have a shop, even if it was an ethical shop and a shop that we believe in. It was always about more. What else can we do? What is the next thing? How can we, be more helpful or attract people, or just probably challenge and just make people just challenge their thoughts and question them. And because we question and challenge our own thoughts every day.
Yeah, definitely. And you spoke around just then, tiptoeing around the word feminism. When would you say you actually realized that you are a feminist?
Well, it was actually my father-in-law. It's always his fault, but I remind him every now and then. I remember I was complaining about it all after dinner. I'm not a feminist because I don't need anybody to save me. I'm not a victim, and blah, blah, blah. And he said, of course you're a feminist, Virginia. Every decent person is a feminist. And I was really upset. So whenever he left, I was like, I'm going to do a research and I'm going to show him wrong. And I'm going to show him all the awful things that feminists do. And he's going to apologize. And then I started researching. I was like, well, I mean, I guess if you look at it this way. And then I kept researching like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Ooh. So I just got trapped into, okay, fine, I'm a feminist, but only if feminist means this, and this. You would never, like just making clear that I was not gonna say yes to the other things I thought it was, but I was very clear. So I guess it started like that. I was like, fine, I guess I'm a feminist after all. And then I think once you get to that point, the more you read and the more you listen, the more you care and the more you want to know. And then it's almost like a non-stop journey where you always just get trapped into the, ooh, and what's next? Oh, I didn't thought about this. That's awful. Yeah, I totally get that. I've been there. So yeah, just an eye-opener.
It's funny that you said that, I'm a feminist, but do you think there's a certain stigma attached to the word feminist, that there's a certain stereotype that people have?
Oh yeah, 100%. And less so every day, but still strong. Thing like people, I guess my echo chamber has changed, so I feel like everybody now is a feminist, and before it wasn't. But I guess it's me moving and surrounded myself around people more comfortable with the word. But yeah, definitely, like the stereotype of man hater or a lesbian or aggressive, yeah, sort of aggressive. Yeah, there's still a lot of backlash and a lot of apologies around it. I think still people have that need that I felt myself of specifying which exact kind of feminist you are, to not be confused with the other ones. Which we try to fight a lot in the website, and we believe that the fact that your voice and my voice is not the same and we disagree doesn't mean that you don't get to call yourself, unapologetically feminist, because it's all about equality and our fight for a more fair world.
Exactly. You're either feminist or you're sexist, really. It's one of the two. So you highlighted before about the products that you're supporting artists online. So would you mind just telling me a little bit more about what kind of work entails with that?
Yeah, so we have different collections designed by different feminist artists. So we have our F, our trademark F, and just to spread the F word, as we like to say. And we get different artists to fill it in with whatever art expression they want. So we got Carola, who did one with diversity faces, and that was the first one we ever did. And then we've collaborated with Pink Beats. She's done a really cool one about intersectionality, and especially about Women's Day. So it was like March. We've done one with Amanda Mustard, which is an American artist, and it was all about body positivity and everybody is a summer body. So again, we always, the only thing we tell them is what we believe in. We believe a lot in intersectionality, representation, and with that in mind, they just create what they want and what feminist means for them in their own artistic expression. And the results are so different, but they're so cool.
It's wonderful to have the knock-on effect of, you know, your company and organization with your partner influencing so many other people and educating them both online and through your shop and through your resources, and also through people's artwork as well. I mean, and it continues. You highlighted earlier with partners, you want to get to a certain amount, and then 50% of your profits will go to organizations like Pregnant Then Screwed, Young Women's Trust. Why is it important for your company to give back?
Well, because I think whenever you call yourself the Feminist Shop, you need to acknowledge that it comes with a certain responsibility, and I would never take it for granted. I think, that's why all our products are very ethical, and we've done a lot of research about it. We support local companies, we pay the artists, no bargaining, whatever they quote. If we can afford it, we pay it. If we can't, we'll work with them in the future. I think whenever you are in a way profiting, not that we're profiting much yet, from something ethical and important, it's your responsibility to make it ethical and responsible. And we do a lot of work around content. Most of our time and investment is around content, educational things and stuff like that. But we don't do the groundwork, and there are amazing associations doing great things that maybe don't have that commercial arm. So we're lucky to be in a position in which people spend money with us, and maybe sometimes just because we can't. Sometimes it's very difficult just to put all your money for associations, but we having that commercial arm, it put us in a position in which we can help and spread the word about those associations. So we know that some people that have bought from us, then they've connected with the association apart and start like monthly donations and things like that, and told us about it, which is great. And we try to link different associations to different collections. So it's just nice for us to see that it's not only words, it's like we get to have a small impact in the people doing the actual work in the ground.
Definitely, it's a like a ripple effect of impact, and I think that collaboration is key to the authenticity of your brand. Also, you're an author as well, and you've written a book, Mika and Lola. So tell me about the inspiration behind the book that's supposed to complement conversations at home. Is that right?
Yeah, so the book started before the website. I was pregnant with my first kid, and I thought, okay, I want to write a book for them that is just a nice book for kids. I'm obviously Spanish, so I wanted to be a bilingual book, that talk about, just being yourself. Like, you don't have to fit into the narrow boxes that the world put us, and just to invite kids to critically think about all those expectations that they have, but in a very kids-friendly way. And then I didn't write it on time. Then I got pregnant again. Then I finished the book. So now I have a son and a daughter. So it looked perfect. And the book is very empowering for both. I mean, it's not a book for girls, as a lot of people think a lot of feminist books are. It's empowering for both genders to explore who they are without limitations. And yeah, I self-published the book, and it has its own website, but obviously we sell it in ours as well. And I've been doing workshops in schools, and I've been doing some public speaking about it, and I'm talking with parents, and it's so exciting, and I love it. I love the effect it has. I love talking to kids and the feedback I get from them. And I'm writing at the moment a second book with the same characters, which is going to be about consent for kids, which I'm very excited about, and a book for parents about the importance of avoiding gender stereotypes in the early childhood and all the effects it have in terms of neuroplasticity, and how we find all those stereotypes in books, TV shows, language, clothes, and basically everywhere.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I mean, how do you feel with gender stereotypes and bias? How important is the effect on young children's development, and how much of a part does it play?
Oh, it's so huge, and I think we underestimate it so much. I think because we have that excuse of it's nature, we get away with almost everything, and like, oh, it's just nature, she just likes this, he just likes it. But research, and there's so much of it, and it's also fascinating, shows that our brain actually is very similar in the moment we're born, and the different lived experiences that we have through all this stereotyping is what make us develop in one direction or another. And the problem is that it's replicated a million times. So it's not only that the baby grows, you get the moment you're born, and the toys they're given to you, then the role models you see in every series, what you see in every book, the words we use for ones, the words we use with others. It's just the similarity of the message, it's replicated a million times everywhere, and we see it from completely different ways. So then I don't think it's fair that we said it was just free choice. Was it? Was it really free choice? So that's exactly what the book I'm writing is about, because I think it's a matter of awareness. I think once you are aware, you cannot not see it. You literally see it everywhere. Every time I turn on the TV now and I'm with the kids, I'm like, no, wrong. And I do have problems with most TV shows, or when I'm reading books, I'm like, why? So I use them to start conversation with the kids. Isn't it weird that, what do you think about that? There we go again, the mom being the one doing this. Do you think, how do we do it in the house? Or do you know somebody that does it differently? But we need to use that as opportunities to invite kids to critically think, because it's overwhelming the amount of stereotyping that they are surrounded by from the moment they're born.
Yes, it's unbelievable, the amount, and the clothes and separate sections, and you know you're going into that section, oh, you know, that's for men. Yeah, I can read, I know, you know, even now, and it's still stereotyping and putting you into boxes. So yeah, that's so great that you're doing that amazing work. You're such a superhero, going and having those books and workshops, and also you've got your own company as well. I mean, what advice would you give to someone who is passionate about something and doesn't know how to start making this into a brand and a business and have many different areas to it?
I think, well, my first advice would be, are you sure? Really tough, but it's about being passionate. To me, it's about my why, and I love it so much, and I cannot, I mean, if I'm honest, I'm in a lucky position and I could afford it, and not everybody can afford just giving a go to their passions. I think well, you can always try to, but you'll need to just dedicate less time, and it's a bit frustrating because you need a lot of time to do things, and it takes so much time to see a return in all that time and money investment. And so I think the first advice would be to be realistic, and I have to remind that to myself all the time, because it's very easy to compare yourself with people that look like they're succeeding, and they have huge platforms and they have access to things that you don't. So I think being realistic and remember your why, like, why do you do what you do? And I generally wake up every morning and I'm so grateful of my job, and I love it. I love writing about feminism. I love speaking about it. I love designing products and finding new associations, and I love talking with the customers. I genuinely love what I do, and I'm not where I want to be in the future, but I'm loving the journey. And I think that part is so important, because it cannot be just about where you want to be. It has to be about loving all the way to get you there, because the journey is going to be definitely longer than you expect and look completely different than you anticipated. And just surround yourself with people that believe in you and cheer you up and celebrate victories with you, and don't let you give up when you're in the days of like, why am I even doing this? I think if you have a passion and you go for it, it is the most exciting thing. But I also think people don't see how hard it is sometimes too, and I think we don't talk about it enough, because nobody wants to go on Instagram and say like having the worst day, or I haven't sold anything in so many days, or wherever. But those things happen, and I think just going with a realistic, even if exciting, situation is what helps. And yes, so I appreciate realistic advice, but I also appreciate the passion and the people cheering me up. So I guess it has to be a balance.
I love how authentic and real Virginia is there about the expectations and the reality of setting up a business. Make sure to check out their brand and their website, The Feminist Shop, and their podcast, which is coming soon too. All three guests have excellent podcasts. That's something to shout about. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let's Go Kickass today. Feel free to subscribe, rate, comment, share, follow me on socials, all of the above. I'm Vicky Carter, and you keep kicking ass.